Welcome to the Rimworld mod rundown. We'll be taking a quick look at what you can expect to see from Vanilla Races Expanded Lycanthrope. For starters, you'll need the Biotech DLC, as well as the additional workshop content, Vanilla Expanded Framework, and Harmony. As a heads up, before we dig deep into this mod, some of the elements will work better if you're running additional dedicated Xenotype mods. So if you're going to use this, consider adding in the other Vanilla Expanded Races, Alpha Genes, and Biotech Expansion Core, Mythic, and Mammalia. So, what do we get with Lycanthrope? Well, you have an entirely new genetic mechanic called Morph, as well as 2 xenotypes to showcase the ability and a bunch of additional genes to allow you to implement it in various ways with your own xenotypes. Now, a really quick bit of admin here. Morph genes are looking for specific xenotypes. This means that while you can have a custom xenotype that morphs into, say, a Hussar, you cannot have a custom xenotype that morphs into another custom xenotype. For that to work, you'll need to use a custom xenotype exporter mod, link in the description. Let's get right into this big mechanic then. Morphing. It allows you to cycle between 2 xenotypes through a few different methods. The most controllable way of doing this is simply morph. A button is placed at the bottom bar when selecting a colonist, and pressing it triggers a small cooldown and swaps between xenotypes for the pawn. That right there should trigger some really cool concepts to run through your head as to what kind of colony you can run. Folk that have the crafting and smarts of a genie with the bulk and power of a Hussar hidden inside them at the press of a button? What about slow healing poor immunity xenotypes that can get a rapid burst of constitution from something like a Sanguiphage with just a simple click? Wasters that could hide out as baseliners until you've saturated your map in pollution. Not only that, you can morph in and out to reset the Psychite dependency timer, which means if you can do that for Psychite with Wasters, what about Ulan and their need for Luciferium? Are you picking up what I'm putting down yet? This potential, the possibilities here, it's just phenomenal. The only limit is your imagination. Now, pressing the button isn't the only way you'll be able to morph your own pawns. You do have some less on-demand options available too. Adulthood morphing is just what it sounds like. The button to morph disappears, and instead, once a pawn reaches the age of 16, they'll explode into a new xenotype and never return to their original form. Extremely useful if you have a very high-costed xenotype for the children to morph into, so their metabolism isn't through the roof while they grow, eating you out of house and home like an ungrateful teenager, raiding the fridge at 3 AM and taking an entire block of cheese that you were saving for the weekend. That's weirdly specific. Adulthood morphing also allows for safer development. You could take defensive genes to try and better protect tiny ones from any dangers that they shed when they come of age, and replace it with more beneficial skills, like turning into one of the Fighterkin races, with huge buffs to plant skills, granting more of a benefit to the colony as a whole rather than as an individual. Or you could set them to turn into a high mate upon reaching adulthood, so you don't have the whole thing to deal with during the early teenage years. Seasonal morphing will automatically swap xenotypes between the 1st of September and the 1st of April-May. In a biome that has permanent summer or winter, I can't think of much use for this, besides some fun flavour perhaps. But in a 30-60 tile, this could be fantastic. You can have your custom xenotype excel with planting throughout the summer, not needing to worry about their temperature tolerances. Then during the winter, when the ground is hard and crops go dormant, they can turn into a xenotype with more useful skills or better resilience. What a great time for them to become something like Yitakin, giving you a better chance to tame animals for food and staying toasty warm with the fur skin. Damage morphing is a clear and awesome choice for a colony filled with wannabe Hulks. If a pawn's health is dropped below 80% maximum, they'll morph into their other xenotype and only return to their original form once healing back above 90%. Provided you aren't initially being hit by something like a Doomsday rocket launcher, a charge lance, or an anti-grain shell, you can reasonably take a shot or a blow and come back swinging harder from it. The obvious choice here is having high skill in crafting, construction, planting, or cooking, and then swapping to something like an Ulan, Sanguiphage, or Archon upon taking damage. You could even have multiple custom xenotypes for each work type that change into a different combat race on damage for maximum style points. Very funky. Random morphing is maximum chaos. If you think Randy Random doesn't make your colony unpredictable enough, you could always stack your colonists with this, and have them occasionally change between their base and chosen xenotype. And the final morphing brings us neatly into the 2 included xenotypes. Nocturnal morphing changes pawns between xenotypes at 6 PM and 6 AM. This allows for some really simple, yet free genetic choices, such as dark vision or UV sensitivity. It also allows you to play around with genes like low sleep to try and squeeze as much potential uptime as possible out of your pawns, balancing their metabolic efficiency to swing from active to passive benefits, such as improving their social skills after 6 PM when they are more likely to be recreating with other pawns, especially if you had someone swapping into a high mate to give that special kind of loving every night. So the 2 included xenotypes that use nocturnal morphing are Wolfman / Wolf person? They aren't gender specific, and the Lycans. During the day, they are a Wolfman. They have a few new cosmetics, a new ability, and some really cool unique genes. By the night, they turn to Lycans, which really expands upon their genetic lineup and makes them a little more bombastic. As with the majority of vanilla expanded races, you have some minor, major, and opposite versions of certain genes contained in this mod. When relevant, I'll point them out. Let's dig deeper into the Wolfman then. They're given a new genetic implantation tool, which has one major difference to others contained in VRE mods. This one implants germline genes. The majority of races that can implant, like sanguiphage or fungoid, apply a xenogene over the top of any germline genes. This means that certain germline races can become somewhat hybrid in their design. It also means you can entirely strip a sanguiphage of their power by implanting a custom xenogerm over the top of their unique genes, bringing them more in line with a standard colonist, unless you gave them a weird xenogerm, in which case you probably made their life considerably worse. Being able to implant into germline genes means you can turn a baseliner into something interesting and still play with xenogenes to push them further into absurdity. This is all a lot of words though. Let's make this really simple. Think of it like this. Germline genes are your foundation. Xenogenes are whatever building you want to throw on top. It's very easy to tear that house down and rebuild it as you see fit. Pulling up the foundation? That's a lot harder to do. Even with my full mod list, I didn't have access to this before. So having the ability to change a foundation, the germline genes, with an implantation tool is very useful on certain colonists, or rather, potential colonists. Pack mentality is the next gene on the list, and it opens up some fantastic alternatives to encourage positive colony relations without using presets in ideology or setting preferred xenotypes. Colonists that share deep talks or have a social fight become part of the same pack, which means both violent and non-violent colonists have the option of joining in with this bond. The larger the pack, the bigger the mood boost, which in turn lessens the chances of negative interactions and breaks around the colony. Win-win. This gene basically works in the exact opposite way to the reclusive trait, so you want a lot of people sharing this buff to make the most of it. Nocturnal is a fun little gene that forces the night owl trait. If you've ever wanted a darkness worshipping cult, this makes it even easier to keep everyone up into the wee hours of the morning, working away in a dark light bunker. This is helped by all Wolfmen having dark vision as standard too. The remaining 2 genes are cosmetics, chest fur and sideburns. Chest fur ignores gender, for all the hairy tits you've never wanted nor needed. It offers a small bonus to minimum comfortable temperature. Sideburns limit beard growth to only the finest of mutton chops, mustache sometimes included. So easy, right? Lycan is where this stuff really gets fun. Lots of new genes and a huge spike in power, with a downside or two to boot. They still have pack mentality, but everything else is about to change. So let's start with their new, superior dark vision. Whereas normal dark vision negates the penalties of darkness, superior dark vision gains bonuses to work speed, movement speed, ranged accuracy, and melee hit and dodge chances. This obviously plays extremely well with the darkness meme, further boosting your combat bonus. Just remember that the darkness accuracy bonus is one of the only buffs that works directly opposite to all other Rimworld logic. If you have no idea what I mean by this, it does take quite a bit of explanation, and this video is already running long enough as it is. I will cover this another time in more detail with a relevant mod. I'll throw it in Weapons Expanded or something, I promise. The next gene is Warhowl, which gives access to the ability of the same name. Warhowl plays into pack mentality with your colony, allowing pawns to emit a battle cry that buffs nearby friendly pawns with an increased melee hit chance, dodge chance, move speed, and a reduction to incoming damage. This buff can stack 10 times. It's a simply insane buff to have when facing attacks at night. It's like throwing Tough, Nimble, Brawler, and 2 stacks of the Jogger trait on everybody. This makes melee only colonies not only viable, but devastating. Territorial is another new gene which plays similarly to the City Builder meme from Vanilla Ideology Expanded, basically meaning that your pawns are happier on the home tile and unhappier when off map, or if placed into a caravan, making them likely to have mental breaks when you really don't want them to. While I'm not big on nomad runs or world questing in Rimworld, being punished for going off map can be a very difficult balance to strike. This will make certain factions, like deserters, harder to join, primarily because of the nature of their quest structure. Bear this gene in mind when deciding what style of colony you're looking to build with your ideology and potential alliances. Extremely Fast Runner is a new Archite gene, and man oh man is it one you'll want to get capsules for. Plus 0.6 move speed with the added bonus of the colonist ignoring difficult terrain. I'll take one on absolutely everything, thank you. Speech Inability is a new gene to make up for the large boost in power that Lycans have over the night. Whilst you'll want your Wolfman socialising to get those pack bonuses, you only get a narrow window to do so because of the Forced Night Owl trait, and their transformation into the Speechless Lycan between 6 PM and 6 AM. On the plus side, it's harder for Lycans to slight each other constantly when they're genetically forced to keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth! Improved Dodge is a new gene, giving all Lycans a dodge bonus equal to the trait Nimble. Now, this is part of the rundown where I might need to suggest another mod to you. Unlimited. Lycans have these huge amount of bonuses to melee hit, melee dodge chances, so you're going to be stacking them like crazy. At some point, you're going to cap yourself on the vanilla values, and all of these extra perks are sadly going to be wasted. So do yourself a favour and let the Vanilla Expanded pump those numbers to the values that they're actually aiming for. Also, yes, things like Vanilla Skills Expanded are basically designed around breaking the limits of these numbers, so putting on Unlimited if you're using pretty much any of the VE mods these days is kind of expected. I mentioned at the top of this video that some alternative genes are included. Dodge also gets a superior version which grants 30%, and the option instead to entirely disable dodging. If dodges are disabled, it also removes any chance for melee hits to naturally miss. If you're running a gladiatorial arena with prisoners, consider throwing them a Xenogerm with this, so they're more likely to get absolutely annihilated for your colonists' amusement. After all, it's a very dull event if someone doesn't lose a vital organ or two. The next new gene for Lycans is Light Sensitivity, which in itself is a more extreme version of UV sensitivity. Whilst UV only impacts a pawn in light above 50%, which in Rimworld means sunlight or sun lamps, normal light sensitivity means a tile with more than 11% light will impact the pawn, lowering move speed and mood. Fortunately, Lycans are naturally night owls and have their extremely potent dark vision. Just be aware that fighting enemies like imps will likely result in fires on nearby tiles that illuminates the battlefield, just well enough to trigger this debuff. To go alongside light sensitivity, you also have the alternative Intense version, which further impacts movement and mood, and a Photophobia gene, which works like Pyrophobia but for light, causing a pawn to flee and try and find a tile that has less than 11% light on it before removing the break. Lycans, as you'd expect, have the standard genes of fast wound healing, aggression, and strong melee damage, which we all know and love by now, as well as the vanilla cosmetic of Fur Skin, which grants them a bonus to comfortable temperature range and removes any nudity debuffs, and the new cosmetic of Canine Nose, Canine Ears, and a Wolf Tail. The wolf tail also grants 0.05 movement speed. And that, as they say, is that. This mod opens up some amazing capabilities for custom xenotypes with morphing, as well as adding in some genes that I was a little surprised hadn't actually appeared on my list in some form yet. The improved dodge, nocturnal, and superior dark vision are very welcome additions. I can only imagine how ridiculous stats will start to get with a colony full of Warhowl. So come on then, let's do this engagement thing. What is the custom xenotype that you're making? How do they morph, and what do they morph into? I'm tempted to try and make my Warhammer Sylvaneth xenotype work again, playing in with bark skin, unarmed claw attacks, wondering if somehow I could have the children a little less barbaric before they turn into gnarled, twisted, spiteful treekin at 16. Thanks for watching, folks. If you have any mods you'd like to see a full breakdown for, or suggestions of mods that you'd like to see covered, feel free to leave them in the comments and I might get around to them. I'll be back again soon with another Rimworld mod rundown. Wherever you are in the world, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. Take care.